Hey, welcome to everybody listening today. We have a fun episode of kind of talking through, what your money is going to do for you in the future. But starting off kind of as us as a family, I always think it's hilarious to some extent. But I played youth sports as a kid. Our kids are all in youth sports, and they give you those shorts. You probably all remember them. They're football or soccer, those little stretchy shorts that you get. And there's somebody somewhere that those fit just perfect. They're the right pair of shorts. But for most everybody, they're too long or they're too short or they're too tight or they're too loose. They're one size fits all. They almost fit nobody. And I think it's an important aspect when you think of your business and when we have the snare of someone who's looking to retire, they're looking what their future may hold. Man, it is one size fits one. It's not a one size fits all. We've had clients and scenarios where people want to travel. They think it's great. There's others that feel they should travel because they're supposed to. There's people who want to come in late to work. They want to leave early from their office. There's no right amount, right? There's no right dictating what you're supposed to do. It's really what you desire to do, what your vision is. And I think there's so many people who get trapped in this idea that I'm supposed to follow the crowd. I'm supposed to retire at a certain date. I'm supposed to live a certain lifestyle. And what's really refreshing is when we work with clients and have the scenario of someone who says, let's vision and dream of where we're headed. Let's figure out what we're doing. And in doing that, they're going to cast a new vision. They're getting the shorts that fit them, right? They say, hey, my legs are a little longer, or I need this waistband to be a different size. And they find something that really fits well and they can just thrive in them versus trying to live through this one size fits most existence.
Right. We're not all going to be professional athletes and have custom made jerseys, but the reality is the one size fits most. It doesn't feel true. And it certainly doesn't feel true, the one size fits all. And this applies too when you're building the financial infrastructure for your life. But part of the work that we love to do is everybody's plan is different. Everybody's goals are unique. Everybody's desires, everybody's past, everybody's relationship with money, their household is different. There's so many different variables that go into it. So throw out that idea that one size fits all. And as you approach this idea of building a financial infrastructure for your life, a financial plan for your life, know that you need to find a custom fit jersey for your life.
Yeah. Well, and your life is worth it, right? It's worth taking the time to figure out where you want to be. We have a friend of ours who he gets off work at 3 so he can go to the gym and work out and then come and be with his kids at 5 o'clock. And for a lot of people, they don't want that. They don't desire that. That wouldn't fit into their lifestyle. But for him, it's perfect. And I think that is a key part of deciding what it is that you want and can you have it? I mean, I'm amazed with, especially people looking to retire, we start doing some of the math and some of the planning. And, the first question is, can I retire? Can we travel? Can I do this? And when we're able to say yes, 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 man, I see their eyes light up of things they didn't imagine were possible. They realized they could live into. In fact, they probably could have been living into this a number of years ago. So at any stage, whether you're mid-career, you're building, you have a business you're running, or you're looking at what might be your next season after your career, it's a great moment to say, what do I really want? What is all this work and effort? What are these resources? What are they really going to do for me? And can I live into something that is just thrilling beyond what you thought was even possible? Because 10 years ago, it might not have been possible, but maybe it is today. So that's the joy of having today's episode of talking about what are the pieces that you may want to live into, that someone may want to live into, and how do we get there? How do we put math and planning and structure behind it so people can really get the value of what they've built?
Right. And so what we're talking about here is kind of a mindset shift. We're going to talk about kind of that transition into retirement or financial freedom within that context. This also applies to people who are ready to make a big transition or shift in their life. Maybe they want to quit one career and start another, or they have a business startup, or, they've just inherited a lot of funds and that's totally changed their financial outlook, right? So we're talking about that shift in mindset. And we're also talking about that experience where maybe you have an investment account and you're just seeking the best growth that you can get from that investment account. That is one method of looking at your investable assets. What we try to do is actually build a plan first, right? I like to tell the story oftentimes that if somebody were to walk into our office tomorrow and say, I've got $1 million, I have $10 million, can you just invest it for me? The initial answer is, well, no, we wouldn't just invest your account right away because we need a plan first. It doesn't mean we can't invest your account. We actually practically know how to invest your account. But the idea is, what do you need that investment account to do for you? What do you need those investable assets to accomplish? What are you up to? What's your vision? What's your goal? And we want to build an investment strategy to meet that. Many people start building their wealth by concentrating their wealth, whether it's within their stock portfolio into one or two companies or something that they, a nostalgic, maybe an inherited asset that they have. Other people are new business owners and they invest all their capital, all their time and energy into that one company, et cetera. So oftentimes we use that illustration of concentration might build your wealth, but diversification is what's going to start to preserve it. And so that oftentimes gives a different mindset shift when they say, okay, here's my investable assets. How do we preserve this so that I can live into a lifestyle that's something that I desire? And so
Mm.
that's kind of a mindset. We like to start with the plan, not just the investment account before we get
Absolutely.
going.
When a big piece of this is we get to do this work together. Laura and I are married. We get to be leaders in our company together. We get to be advisors together. We often sit with married couples or partners that are considering where are they headed, and their initial answers might be very different of saying, "Well, I want security," or "I want to grow this," or "We'll retire," or "We'll go to the next phase as soon as we get X amount of dollars in the account." And that number is arbitrary. And one spouse or one partner may feel that, the other may not. And you're really getting that unity of saying, what are we really working for? What are we really building towards? What do we really want out of this? And we laugh that we often are, we call it therapist adjacent. We're not therapists. We try not to go into those waters, but we're right next to that. That money is such a big driver of people's hopes and dreams and identity. And to get to talk about what this money is doing for them, what it can do for them, what their resources they've built, what the future may look like, but to really sit either someone by themselves or with their partner or spouse to kind of say, where are we headed? And what would be thrilling if it was possible that the money could do this? If it was possible that we could live into this, would we want that? And I love it when people have surprising answers. When they realize, I really do want to leave my job. I didn't know that, but if I could retire, I would. Others that say, I don't ever want to stop doing what I'm doing. We've had physicians who say, as much as I complain about it, I love what I do, and I would love to always do this, into my 80s if I could, at a
Mhm.
certain level of work. Maybe it's only 1 or 2 days a week, but I'd love to keep practicing in a certain level. And that moment of clarity, that vision for the future is so, so helpful to be able to build kind of a plan, a lifestyle that is going to work really well.
Mhm. So imagine this for our listeners is that you and your partner are anticipating retirement and you know it's somewhere on the horizon. You know that you have been working hard at your career. You've been accumulating assets, whether in a retirement account or an after tax brokerage account. Maybe you have a business that you've built that you're just kind of starting to think about what would it look like if I didn't show up to the office every day, right? And so imagine that scenario where you as a couple start to look at your finances and you think your lifestyle right now is dictated by the income that you're earning, the cash flow that you have. And you say, can we take that next big trip? Can we invest in that new real estate entity? Can we start up another business or help our kids out buy their first home? Or, how much can we spend for college education, right? So you're thinking through some of these major shifts
Mhm.
and you're looking at your cash flow, but you're also considering like, but I've built up these sizable assets. It might be a retirement account, it might be an investment account, it might be a business, and you're thinking, how do I start to access some of that value? And at what point do we shift from just being income earners into gleaning off of those assets that we've put away? And this is oftentimes a moment of complexity, of new complexity as you start to consider stepping away from your primary income earning position, you're now starting to think about all these different sources of cash flow, all these different needs. Well, if I did have more time on my hands, maybe we would travel more. Maybe I'd start that new charitable organization that I always wanted to. So there's layers to start to build into that plan. And so imagine that the conversation starts to shift, right? Up until this point, your lifestyle has been dictated by the income that you earn on a monthly or an annual basis. What if that conversation starts to shift where you say, this is the lifestyle that we want? These are the choices that we want to make financially. How can our assets support the lifestyle we choose to live? And it's a big mindset shift. I'm going to say it's easier said than done.
And I think to your comment, Laura, it's easy to count your income and say, well, we spend what we have, or we spend what we have less a little bit for savings or whatever it may be. It's, I think, meaningfully harder to say, here's what it costs to run our life. Here's the upgrades or changes that we would be really excited to live into, and kind of come up with this is what we need. And then to look and say, well, how do our assets provide that on a tax efficient way? The beauty is we do this all the time, right? This is the fun that our team gets to jump into. We have some great planners that love to play with this equation. How do we, take the assets and solve for funding this lifestyle? But for most folks, and I think it's great, we start off often with a spreadsheet that somebody's built. They come in Here's the spreadsheet. One spouse says, look, it's all right here. I'm not sure if it's all right, but it's all right here. And the other spouse says, I have no idea what that spreadsheet says. I have any idea what they're talking about. But to go through it to really say, like, let's tune up the numbers, let's determine what you really need, and have that mindset shift, like you said, Laura, to shift from here's my income that dictates my lifestyle, rather to say I'm choosing a lifestyle. How do I utilize my assets to produce the income I need to make this lifestyle sustainable?
Who or what are you supporting? And it might be yourself. I've always wanted to buy a boat. I've always wanted to go travel to whatever place it is. It could be someone else or something else.
Mm,
I've always wanted to contribute to this charitable organization to build X, Y, or Z. I've always wanted to, maybe I've supported this charitable organization, but now I want to go to where the work is being done to see
mm,
practical impact of the investment that I've made in that organization. There's so many different ideas and opportunities. So that mindset shift is required into activating your assets for the benefit of living into your plans, your future plans. You've worked so hard up until this point to build your wealth, and your wealth might be continuing to grow. But now, how do we change our mindset to say, how do we unlock or access those assets to provide the life that we want for you, for your children, for your grandchildren, charitable organizations, for, right? The list goes on. So many
yep.
options.
Right. And that starts with a vision, a vision of saying, this is what I want to live into. And, we've had back to back scenarios, even the same day, where one would say, "Hey, our kids are doing great. We really like our kids, but they don't need any money from us. They're thriving. They're doing well. We're going to spend everything that we have. That's our plan, right?" And we've had other scenarios, even the same day, where the other family would say, "We're really worried about our kids and the cost of real estate and what the future may hold. So we want to pass on as much as we can, and we're willing to kind of downsize our lifestyle." And we talked at the beginning about those, one size fits all shorts. This is where, you just have to throw that out the window, that those are very different visions. Someone who wants to, what's the term, the ski parents spending their kids' inheritance,
Yes.
that we want to use these resources. We want to go experience things. Whereas another family may say, we want to preserve, a real estate or an account for each of our kids. Very different goals. Those require very different plans. But at the end of the day, to say, this is the vision, this is what we want to live into, how do we use these assets to support that?
Right. We might want to create a legacy so that our children can utilize the wealth that we've built, but it's not just given to them, right? We don't want to raise a future generation of those kids that are just entitled. We want to teach them some sort of work ethic, but give them access to the capital that the family can benefit, right? I think what's ironic in this conversation is oftentimes money is not actually the source of the problem. So sometimes it's lack of clarity, what is important to me or to us. Sometimes it's actually a pursuit of, some sort of change. Something is not what you desire in your life and you want to change, but you don't know exactly what that is. Sometimes you're looking for just a sense of peace, like Jeremiah was talking about. Oftentimes there's one person in the marriage or in the couple that kind of leads the charge in terms of financial decisions, and oftentimes that can become kind of lonely, especially the more complex or more dramatic the change might be. So maybe you're looking for a sense of peace or alignment, right? Partnership. And then ultimately freedom, not to be tied to, just the plan as it exists, or tied to certain limitations that you perceive are there, but actually don't know if they're real. That's part of the fun we get to do. What would it look like in your life, to our listeners, if there was a financial plan in place that gave you enough clarity so that you could realize that you could retire sooner or spend more than you thought you could in this season of life? Or maybe you don't have to sell your business immediately. Maybe you can continue, or there's a different exit structure that would benefit you and others as well. And maybe realizing that actually the biggest concern is not how much money you make, but what you choose to do with the resources that you have, right?
Yep, that's right. And there's an aspect where I think so many people get in a mindset of, I'm sacrificing now for the future I want to build and enjoy, right? Even the very idea of putting money into your 401k or putting money into retirement, right? You're kind of purposely putting some money aside now so that in the future you have a better outcome. Great wisdom. And we have a lot of folks we've worked with in scenarios we've reviewed that they've done that for years. But now it's getting to a point of saying, when do I actually have that enjoyment? Is it still this far off item? We've had people that have well past the point of financial independence. They've passed the point of needing to work, but they're still desperate to put more into their retirement accounts. They're still, charging head forward to saying, oh, someday I'll enjoy this. Someday I'll have that. And they don't realize they've already passed the point of not needing to do that anymore. And some of that is a math problem, right? They just don't realize the math. But a lot of it is the emotional, I'm not ready to transition to this next thing. I have such a rhythm of hard work, a rhythm of making good choices for my future that I'm not sure how to live in the present and do it in a way that is healthy, constructive. I mean, we've talked about this before. My dad was a fire captain. That was his career. And it's very common to retire in their 50s. So he was 57 when he retired. And he just made a joke. He's like, I can't sit on a porch and just rock, the idea of retirement. He's like, I'm 57. So he started off, he went, as soon as he left the fire department, he started his own business, went on to these new adventures, which were fun and exciting, things he's always wanted to do, and finally had the freedom to do it. But that idea that how do you shift from I work hard, I make good choices, I provide for my family, for the lifestyle I want to live, transition that mentally into it's not about being productive, it's not about bringing in a certain amount of income, it's more about what really matters to me and how do I lean into those things in a way that still has purpose in my day and hard work and all this knowledge and ability you've built up that's still being fully utilized. But things like mentorship and investing in others and passing along all of that, I think, can take a higher position in someone's day. But it's a
Yeah.
mental shift. It's part of it's
Yep.
math, part of it is mental, but saying, what do I really want to be about in this next season? If you've already taken the time to build that freedom, it's just living into it.
Yep. And it has to do a lot with like what type of sacrifices you're willing to make, right? If you've been solely focused on building your career or your business or multiple businesses, there's sacrifices that whether you knew it or not were made. Maybe sacrifices for your health or sacrifices in your relationship or sacrifices for adventures that you've always wanted to take, right? And so there's going to be a season where you start to reevaluate some of those sacrifices that you've made. And maybe there's a different lens where you say, okay, what if I chose not to sacrifice those things, but allowed them to become higher priorities? What can I let go of on the business building or the asset building size in order to create this priority? And that you ultimately don't want to wait too long because traveling the world at age 85 is going to look quite different than traveling the world at 55 or 65. What sort of adventures do you want to have with your kids while they're still living with you before they get to go away to college that will give them a different perspective on life or cultures or the world or just creating family bonding? So I think that one of the critical questions someone can ask themselves while they're thinking through the season of life and what they want their money to do is, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you currently sacrificing? And what are you willing to sacrifice going forward? Life is precious and we only get one of them, right? And we're not guaranteed the very next day. And so not to become too philosophical, but what are you unwilling to sacrifice in this moment and what needs to become a greater priority? And that oftentimes kind of dictates the way that we work with our clients. I tell you, oftentimes you have somebody come in the door and they're waiting for this like shameful experience. Stop spending here, start saving more here, make this choice, make that choice. And, it's like, wait, hold on. Pause. We need to understand who you are, what you're all about, what your main priorities are, and then your finances are to serve you and your future. And that's where the motivation is derived. It's not from somebody telling you what to do. If you go to the doctor and you want to get healthy and you ask him how to do so, if your motivation is already there, then the information that he gives you is just advice to help equip you along your way. You're already determined to become more healthy. Right. So, in terms of goal mindedness, we're not there to just shame and blame and do this and don't do that. But we're here to give advice to support you towards a vision that you're already compelled to achieve. And in a lot of ways, kind of hold you accountable to it. How are we going to get there?
Yeah, right. And I think the first step is acknowledging it's a transition, acknowledging this next phase of life. What's the phrase? If you don't do anything different, nothing, or if nothing changes, nothing changes, right? Nothing changes in your life, nothing changes in your outcomes. And to really acknowledge, like, okay, if we want something different, it's going to take usually getting some insight, getting some vision, getting some planning, and then living into that. And that's so powerful, I think, for people who are ready for the next season to start.
Yep. So when you think through what you want your money to do, and if you need another thought partner in the process, come talk to us. We'd love to meet you and get to know you and help you build a pathway forward so that you can achieve your vision. Thanks for listening. We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review, even if it's not 5 stars. We welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about, or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.